Hey, everybody out there in LITA land, this is Jason Griffey, and I am here today to talk a little bit about a trend that I see coming in technology. This is a trend that is largely already here, although I think the next 2 to 3 years are going to be really interesting, and that trend is 3D printing. This is sometimes called fabbing, which is short for fabrication. There's actually a really good book about this trend called Fab that if you're interested at all you should look up. For those that aren't familiar, 3D printing is effectively the using a digital file that describes an object and then sending it to a three-dimensional printer that can use a substance, sometimes plastic, sometimes resin, sometimes even foodstuffs. There are people that are playing with 3D printing in icing, for example. But that takes the file and then uses extruded plastic to build it, so to speak, on in the real world. So what you have is the ability to model an object completely digitally and then effectively hit a button and have it pop out of your printer that's sitting on your desk. The availability of this has been around for quite a while for high-end kind of prototyping of electronics. A lot of companies have these devices and have used them to do case manufacturing and to test fittings of electrical components and all sorts of things like that. But the prices of these and the technology that drives them has come down. So instead of costing many tens of thousands of dollars, you can buy a 3D printer for your desk for a little over $1,000 now. My favorite of these is the MakerBot by MakerBot Industries. They cost about $1,200, and you can print using extruded plastic. Just about anything you can think of. Everything from, there are plans online for everything from action figures to actual fully functioning clocks. You can actually print your own gears and assemble your own clock and put it together using one of these things. You can print a doorstop. You can print pretty much anything that is a physical, small physical object. The MakerBot printer is often, one of the models of it is called a cupcake printer because it prints things that are about the size of a cupcake, for reference. These are really interesting, and they're interesting in a kind of a sci-fi sense, in that it's getting us one step closer to the Star Trek, kind of ideal of creation from nothing. But it's also kind of interesting for libraries in a few ways. One is that there's a lot of interesting metadata questions about this. How do you describe physical objects in such a way that they're findable by the digital file that you need to print them out? So that there's some interesting metadata kind of questions there. How do you catalog this sort of thing? There's also some interesting copyright questions and some legal questions. What happens if I print a trademarked object in some way, or is it possible for me to violate copyright law by printing a physical copy of a Barbie head, for example? There's some really interesting questions here, and I think there's also something to be said for the role that libraries play in showing people new technologies and making especially new technologies that people can't afford individually, right? Part of what a library does is spread out our economic buying power so that individuals can experience things they couldn't afford directly. So there's some degree to which this is going to be important for something like this new technology of 3D printing. I'm really excited. There are libraries that are definitely playing with it, and I think that we'll see a rise in that sort of thing over the next year or so. Hopefully within the next 2 to 3 years, the varying file types and things, there's a lot of kind of issues that can be sorted out so that we get some standardization on this. But I'm really excited. I think it's a really interesting new set of technologies, and I think that libraries, as always, are going to have their hand in it in some way. So that's my interesting trend. At least I hope it's interesting. And I hope that you guys find it interesting enough to go out, do some research. Until we talk again, hi, I'm Jason, and I hope to see you guys in New Orleans at the ALA Annual Conference. Thanks a lot. Bye.